Yeah, we have some interesting memories from back then. I was playing Gertie's, I was playing the Bitter End, I was playing all those places opening, and then I started working with Tom and Vince doing the management situation. Then I got involved with Jerry Ragavoy at the Hit Factory. He signed me, and I started to record with Jerry, and I started various and it's all in the book. but anyway, take me from there, from the '70s. Now, what happened with you at that point? You were doing Vanguard,
Right.
Then where did you go from there?
Okay, so after about 75, I had a disagreement with Vanguard. I had signed two very successful acts, although they weren't super successful, then Dave Loggins and Kinky Friedman. And Kinky was sold to Dunhill Records for a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I didn't get anything out of it. I was very disappointed. And I told Maynard Solomon that Dave Loggins was recording a song called Please Come to Boston. And we had to, this before it was sold, we had to give him another $3,000, $4,000 to do another mix on it. And Maynard, being a folkie or whatever, didn't want to do it. So I was really disappointed, and I decided to leave.
Now, Please Come to Boston was a #1 hit, wasn't
Yes,
it?
yeah, on Epic though.
Yeah, on Epic.
But it was recorded by under my jurisdiction, you know.
So where'd you go from there?
So went out on my own. I became a partner with Charlie Benanti, and we had a very nice management company: Michael Urbaniak, Josh White Jr., Tom Paxton, Richie Havens.
I said one of the things I remember about the '70s in the Village was CBGB's, which originally supposed to be country, bluegrass, and blues.
Right.
That didn't happen.
Never saw one of those.
Never happened, right. What do you remember about CBGB's?
The toilet seats. or no toilet seats.
No toilet seats.
No doors. The place was disgusting.
CBGB's in the punk scene changed everything as far as music for me. I couldn't play anymore. I mean, there were very few places. Everything started to change. At the same time, you had disco happening as well. And so you had the disco and punk situation in the late 70s, mid to late 70s,
Right.
and it changed everything for me. How about you?
Well, I didn't like that scene at all because I was used to working with people who crafted their songs, who knew how to play their instruments, you know, might have been playing 10, 15 years. And, you know, these were great artists, where the punk scene was a bunch of kids who maybe played for 3 months and then put a band together and had this look, and it was more about that look and their attitude. So I was really unhappy about that. However, you know, it did open up music to a lot of kids, and a lot of kids bought guitars and basses and stuff.
Oh yeah, it was great for the music manufacturing guys. I mean, they could sell all these guitars and drums, and people couldn't play them, but anyway.
So out of that whole bunch, though, there were a few that did come out.
Well, Seymour signed the Ramones,
Right.
and they did very well.
Right.
And there was Joan Jett, and there were a
And
bunch
still
of
doing- still
that,
doing
are,
well.
that are still doing
Right.
good, that are still making music, and you can't knock that music. But on the other hand, boy, that was a difficult time for me as well.
Yeah, I didn't like it, but I did get involved in the late '70s in the disco area, the dance area.
Now, what do you remember? I think I did a little bit in the book about Eddie O'Loughlin and Midsong Records and Bob Reno. Any stories about Eddie?
Well, yeah, and Bob too.
Okay. Give me a little bit on that. What do you remember about those guys?
Well, I replaced Bob at Vanguard Records. Bob was the head of A&R, and they let him go and they hired me.
Uh-huh.
Of course, he was such a spendthrift that he basically spent the entire budget. So I was again in a place on a shoestring, right? But I did fine. I got a lot of hits for Vanguard.
Now, did he then set up Midsong after that with Eddie?
Yes, yeah. And Eddie always was a great music guy and knew great songs. And I remember going up there and seeing Eddie and Bob, and there was John Travolta sitting around as you know he was signed to them.
Right.
So they had a quick run with these pop songs that Bob likes and Eddie likes.
And then I wrote about Carol Douglas and what they did with the disco and how that started a whole new situation. Now, what do you remember about the disco situation?
Well, I actually signed Carol Douglas later on to a label I started with Danny Weiss called Shineke Cachet. I started Cachet Records, made a deal with Shineke. It became Shineke Cachet. And we actually did quite well in the dance area, but with the jazz influences, because that was Danny Weiss's
Right.
real.
Danny was really a jazz guy.
And a great producer, right? So we did some wonderful records, including Carol Douglas, Noel Pointer. Well, we did the smooth jazz things, which also became big in the early.
Was that
the
late
late
70s?
70s.
It was the late 70s still.
Yeah, it was more like Quiet Storm in those days, right?
Mhm.
So, and WBLS had a Quiet Storm program, and yeah, so that was a record label that I started with Danny, and it was distributed through Koch.
Mhm.
which, you know,
Right.
and they saw how well we did, and then I had a bit of a problem with my partners.
Now tell me
Those things
something.
happen, right?
Is Koch Records part of the Koch brothers?